there were two things, surprisingly, that affected my pain more than anything else. So the first thing, which I won't go into too much detail, but it was being inauthentic. So whenever I was inauthentic, my pain would increase. And particularly in my chest area around my sternum. Whenever I tried to people please or make others happy, or I wasn't truly being myself, my pain would definitely get much worse in that area. I find it so fascinating how something so psychological can have such an impact on something such as pain, which is traditionally thought as a biological problem, which very clearly it isn't. So if you've been following the channel for a while now, you would have slowly built up your toolkit. So in the last session, we spoke about mindfulness, and I conceptualized your journey with chronic pain as you are a traveler who's slowly accumulating all of these different tools in your toolkit. So you should have a few different tools by now, including a lot of knowledge about pain. You will understand how so many things affect it. You're also learning how to be more compassionate with yourself. And slowly over time, we are going to get this toolkit stronger and stronger and stronger. So we've talked a lot about pain being a biopsychosocial phenomenon, meaning that biological factors influence it, but so do psychological factors and social factors. On my channel, I talk so much about the psychological and social factors because they are just so incredibly important when it comes to the experience of pain. And in my situation, although I would never ever dismiss any biological components, I certainly have to say that the psychological and the social factors were incredibly important on my chronic pain journey. And it was so interesting. I was listening to a webinar recorded last year by the British Pain Society. And the man who was giving the lecture spoke about how important the psychological and the social factors are when it comes to the pain experience. He actually highlighted that the psychological and the social factors were arguably more important than the biological factors. And he said that the biopsychosocial model should actually be called the psychosocial biomedical model, or the psychosocial biological model. He argued that why should the bio be at the front when the psychosocial is arguably more important? And he's not the first person who I've heard say that. But I just thought that it's so beautiful and so fascinating that people are slowly recognizing more and more how important the psychological and the social factors are. And I hope that you have slowly started to integrate this into your thinking, that the solution for your pain experience is rarely ever found in the tissues, especially if you've been in a state of chronic pain for a very long time. So we've talked about pain being a constructed experience at higher levels, involving primarily your brain. We've spoken about how it's distributed all over your brain, that so many things impact it, including past memories, things you anticipate in the future, things that have happened to you in the past, people you meet, the things you do, the things you think and believe. All of these things emerge together in this beautiful, intricate melting pot, and may or may not produce the experience of pain. So in your life, you've really got to be a curious detective, and you've got to work out, what are the things in my life that indicate some sense of safety? These things decrease the pain experience. What are some things in my life that give a sense of danger in some sorts? And you can look at the places you go, the people you see, the things you think and believe. All of these are really valuable places to look. But on your pain journey, what you're doing is you're basically trying to investigate from a psychosocial perspective and a biological perspective, what are the different causes for your pain? And as I've mentioned and hammered down so many times, they can be a range of different things. And it's so interesting where they can come from. On a surface level, some of these things can be really easy to identify. If you have an anxiety disorder, this is very easy to identify, and this is very likely contributing to your pain. If you've depressed, definitely your mental states can contribute to the experience of pain. If you've got a really horrible boss, definitely this is something that's easily identifiable that contributes to your pain. If you are a person who equates pain to tissue damage, this is a thought or a conception that will affect your pain. So these are all relatively easy things that you can find. But sometimes the things that really impact your pain can be in really difficult to find places. And you have to really introspect and you have to look very, very hard. So in my life, I looked at so many different things. And there were two things, surprisingly, that affected my pain more than anything else. And I searched everywhere. I went on a journey for years and years and years. I had nights where I was so beside myself. I was so desperate. And at the end of the day, after being on this really long journey, I found two things that were acting as very, very big contributors to my chronic pain experience. So the first thing, which I won't go into too much detail, but it was being inauthentic. So whenever I was inauthentic, my pain would increase. And particularly in my chest area around my sternum, whenever I tried to people please or make others happy, or I wasn't truly being myself, my pain would definitely get much worse in that area. And in a way, I gradually began to view my chest as an indicator of my level of authenticity. When I wasn't being authentic or true to myself, my chest would often hurt a lot more. Isn't that so fascinating? I'm someone who's quite grounded in science, I like to think, but I find it so fascinating how something so psychological can have such an impact on something such as pain, which is traditionally thought as a biological problem, which very clearly it isn't. Now, the arguments of where those feelings come from, that's for a separate episode, but I just want to highlight to you that sometimes the causes of your pain can be in really difficult places to look. The second thing that we're going to talk about today, that you are going to put in your toolkit, is a core fear. So when you're in pain, it's not only the pain that's bothering you, it's very often the fear of pain, or the fear of what can happen if you are in pain for a long period of time, that can be more important than the pain itself. There's a lovely researcher, and her name is Tamar Pincus, and she focuses a lot on pain. And I've looked at a couple of her videos. You can Google them on YouTube, or you can look at them on YouTube. But one thing that she said that I actually wrote on a card, and if you are getting to know me, or if you've watched a few episodes, you will know that I really love my cards. So I wrote on this card, and this is something that she said: fear of pain is as important as the pain itself. Fear of pain is as important as the pain itself. Now, your core fear is something that can really have a huge impact on your pain. Identifying your core fear can be a challenge, but once you do, it can be really, really liberating, and it can have a significant effect on your pain. I'm going to tell you about my core fear, and then I'm going to give you some useful knowledge or instructions to hopefully help you identify your core fear. So recently, I was standing in my kitchen, and my chest was really, really sore, just as it had been in the past. And I thought to myself, I remember this card: fear of pain is as important as the pain itself. And it wasn't the pain in that moment that was the problem. It was my fear of what would happen if the pain continued for a prolonged period of time. My fear in that moment was that I wouldn't be able to work, that I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. This fear in itself reinforced the pain, almost like a feedback loop in a way, I would say. At a surface level, the fear that the pain would continue and that I couldn't work. If I went down a level, what's the worst outcome of not being able to work? The worst outcome of not being able to work would be to not be able to provide for my family. What's the worst outcome of not being able to provide for my family? The worst outcome of that, for me, on some level, I would say it's not being needed. Now, what's the problem with not being needed, or why would that be a problem? And for me, that would be a problem because I would feel invaluable. I would feel not good enough. I would feel to some degree unworthy. So unworthiness, and I'd say that would likely come from an issue in my past, probably revolving around traumatic experience, but that is my core fear. And you can really go down deep if you really want to, but the important thing to realize here is that there is a great chance that you have something that you're scared of. It may not be like me, where at a very deep level you feel unworthy to some extent. It could be something else. But very often, that fear is very often, perpetuating the cycle of chronic pain and making it worse and worse and worse. I find it to be so incredible. So in that moment in the kitchen, you know what I did? I had the sore chest pain, and I thought to myself, is it actually the pain, or is it the fear of pain that's driving the pain? I realized it was the fear of the pain that was driving the pain. And just that awareness was so liberating. I actually immediately afterwards went to the gym, and an hour later, I had no pain. I wasn't even thinking about it. So for me, that's a really, really big one. And I think perhaps for you too, if you're willing to look, you will also find that that's a big one in your life. I'm interested to hear if you have any core fears. And I'm sure you do. If you've been struggling with pain for as long as I have, then very likely there's something at an unconscious level that's driving your pain. And if you can just identify it, that's such a valuable tool in your toolkit. It can really help you with the experience of pain. If you can identify it, please let us know in the comments below. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day today whenever you see this, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you again soon.